Welcome back to Echo Ridge in another episode here in our Max Colonization series, where today we're going to be trying to finish off our super space sauna. Full disclaimer before we start, you may hear something a little different in my voice, and it's because once again, I've caught a little bit of a funk. We're still here in our starting prehistoric planetoid, and if you remember from last episode, we started building this massive industrial complex. That I think we're going with super space sauna, I don't know. We have some work to do in this place today. There's a few problems. First, let me give you the updates. You'll notice we've managed to get rid of all the liquid that was stacked in here, so I can get rid of this pump. If you remember, we were just bringing all the liquid over to this side, dropping it over here, and it slowly started flashing. We still have a little bit here on the bottom, but as you can see, it's starting to boil as well, and soon it will flash into steam. We are also trying to get rid of all the errant gases. Up here at the top, you can still see we've got some polluted oxygen, maybe a little bit of oxygen. And it's because, remember, we started off with the steam bath and not the vacuum. And what we're doing is just pumping everything through a gas filter. If it's not steam, it goes out. If it is, it tries to stay in. Well, it wasn't very long before there was over 20 kilos worth of steam pressure, so the high pressure gas vent doesn't work. So then we take the rest of that steam and throw it in the golden gas reservoir. And then once it gets full, we just deconstruct it, rebuild another golden gas reservoir, and whammo blammo, those pumps can keep working. We're also doing the same, trying to get all the steam out of this area here. And then I have another top level gas pump over here, which I think, yeah, there's still some hydrogen and stuff up there. But for the most part, the right side's looking a little bit better. Now we still need to put in another liquid lock, and that is the liquid lock that's going to be used for getting out. The issue is I don't necessarily want to put the liquid lock here, because then the dupe is going to have to go over, climb some ladders, go back over, and then out. So what I'm thinking is that next liquid lock will go on top of the sauna. So I think we will go ahead and start that process now. I can probably leave this space scanner in. And while we're working on that, let me give you an update on these volcanoes. This little temporary solution, just to be able to spread out some of the heat, and that way we don't have magma going everywhere, well, this is not a permanent good solution, because stuff like this will happen. Because it's so much magma coming out of the volcano so very quickly, they form tiles. Now, there's a couple of ways we can get around this. First is by using a robo miner, which I'm going to go ahead and queue that up anyways. I do need to start getting back with the research. And using a robo miner to sort of break apart the tiles whenever they form. But then you're losing half of the igneous rock because it mines just like a dupe, so this 1800 kilos worth of igneous rock would turn into 900. Now normally what you would do is just sort of drop the magma out just a little bit at a time, and then it would just form debris. But then you'd have to insulate this whole thing in, make sure there's no gas in there, and I'm not exactly sure that's the method I want to go with. So I think to start off with, we're going to try a couple of experiments while this thing is dormant and see if that will work. And the experiment I think I'm going to try is just letting the magma sort of flow in a couple of different directions, and that way it sort of spreads the magma out so that by the time it ends up cooling, it will just cool into debris instead of solid tiles. I don't know if this is going to work. We're going to give it the good old try. Gonna need to get rid of these ladders too, or they will also melt. I will push the magma to the right so I can get rid of these, and then I'll have to get rid of that one. Not a big deal, just a small experiment I wanted to try. Worst comes to worst, like I said, we'll make a magma dropper in there. In fact, the volcano over here erupts in 3 cycles, so it'd be better if I did the experiment here. We'll get a much faster result with it, and all those steel tiles have once again depleted my steel reservoir, so I think it is also time to start moving the metal refinery up. I would like to have a better idea where I'm going to put all of this stuff. For something like metal refineries that we're going to be using quite often, it would be better if they were right over here. Less of a travel distance. But I already have so much heat here, I don't think that would be a good idea. Now I do have 114 tons of iridium, it just feels like a waste to use iridium. I only have so much of it. Back over here, you can see as the duplicates went out, a bunch of this steam was lost to the vacuum of space, hence the reason we do need to get working on that liquid lock. In this case, though, I do not need to double lock it. Well, because this is a vacuum out here, there's nothing for the sauna heat to transfer to, so this will be fine. I am going to have to fill it up with more naphtha though, which means I'm going to need to put some drywall in here. Don't want any of the steam escaping through there either. And it would also help if I built it tall enough for dupes to be able to get out. That would be good. There we go. And to make sure this experiment doesn't have any outside influences, I do want to try to mop all this up. Bad thing though is they will try to bring that inside the base, so before I do that, let me put a bunch of storage bins down here. Or I can even just use a dispenser, say right here, and I'll put it on sweep only everything. So anything that we sweep, they'll always try to take it to the dispenser with the higher priority or the closest one, and that in this case is this one. I put the dispenser on priority 6 and sweep only, so now I can sweep this stuff out. I will also try to sweep this stuff up here. We still have another 2.8 cycles before it erupts, so this should be okay. Still looking at where I need to put those metal refineries, and I'm really giving thought to the travel distance, but we really do have a lot more space over here. Of course, I also want to put a nuclear reactor somewhere in here. Plus, our rocketry is going to be going over here, so there's already going to be a lot of heat coming through. I know eventually we will be trying to run the tubes through this planetoid, but until I get my dirty little hands onto some plastium, which is somewhat of a pain in the tuchus to create, you need thermium, plastic, and brackwax. The brackwax is not too bad. It just comes from brackine, which you can make in a couple of different ways. One, just heating the brackine over 80°, that's not too bad, and we get 100 grams of brackwax out. From there, though, you also need thermium, which, as you may remember, requires niobium and some tungsten. We don't have access to niobium, nor will we for quite some time. So, tubes inside of our massive space sauna is probably not going to happen for quite some time. Up here on the top, our liquid lock is going in. This is going to work pretty nicely. I am putting the meteor blaster over here. It overlaps a little bit with this one, so we shouldn't have any problems with the meteors. In fact, it might be better if I move this over, and then I could put the enclosed telescope right here too. Which does bring up a point about the meteor blasters. There were some comments asking why I'm not just using intercosmic blast shots to shoot the meteors out of the sky before they even hit the planetoid. And the reason why is because, well, I want some of the debris from knocking those meteors out of the sky here locally on the planetoid. You get about 25% of the debris back, as opposed to just letting them hit whatever bunker tiles or metal tiles that you have. And in this case, it'll give us even more copper, iron, and gold. I wish we had a uranium one close by. There is an amber field over here. There's a rocky asteroid over here. But having a renewable source of uranium would allow me to run a nuclear reactor, which is something eventually I want to do, first of all, so I can take all those rads and try to destroy some of this neutronium that is in our way, but I think we're still a long ways away from it. Why are we overheating? Oh, it's getting too hot for steel. Let me change this material over to iridium temporarily. Gas reservoirs are full again, so I will deconstruct them and create some more. We still have a lot of steam in this area. Remember, we're just trying to pump all the steam out. That way we can recapture all of this. Somewhere in here is going to be a nice debris chiller, because that's how I plan on taking all of this debris out. Here we go with this first volcano test. Magma is coming out, slowly making its trip over. Yes, this is what we want to see. The smaller parts of the blade get cooled quicker, which causes it to form debris instead of tiles. This might work out well, although it will still be difficult to get in there because even with an iridium auto sweeper, I have a feeling it would still overheat. Oh yeah, this worked out well. And we know it's going to erupt the same exact way each time, so I can even get rid of these tiles here. And maybe even when we have a bunch of temperature shift plates, yes, that is a job I still need to do. It'll spread that heat out even better, so I won't have to worry about having an auto sweeper and a conveyor loader picking up this debris and then circling it all around. So with our newfound knowledge, we won't come too close to needing those. I can use the regular ladders there again. Alright, well that kind of works so far. One of the considerations I have to make is I have to start putting steam turbines onto the sauna. You can see right now in some parts it's over 200 degrees, hence the reason, well, all this liquid is going bye-bye. We only have a little bit left here. But before I can put the metal refinery in there, I need to have steam turbines in in here or all the buildings are going to melt anyways. It looks like we're done, especially with this side. There's no more extra gases. Oh, I just noticed that little guy there. Maybe I can just build that in and it'll destroy the hydrogen. We'll see. I'll also try to do that here. It may end up pushing it out, but there might be too much steam pressure for that to happen, which means I can get rid of all of this. That tile did end up destroying the hydrogen. And over on this side, we still got a little bit of a mess. Looks like I'm going to need another gas pump. Let's put it like here. Connect it in with this loop. And it looks like, oh, I forgot to build the next gas reservoir. And we're out of steel again. So I'm just going to use iridium. But I'm not going to get into that habit. I want to hoard my iridium. In the industry of starting to put things in here, I wanted to get a couple of power plants going. Once again, I need more steel, but I figure this would be a good spot. Or would it be better to have it lower? If I had them lower, I wouldn't have to run the heavy watt wire all over the place, which could keep the debris doing a little bit better. But then again, there's not a lot of room down here. Yeah, let me cancel all this. It does appear like I am getting some off gases, and it's because as the liquid moves over, say, polluted dirt, and then retracts, there ends up being no steam in that tile for just a fraction of a second, which allows whatever debris in there to off-gas. In this case, it's buckets of polluted water, so I need to get rid of all this. We just got the notification that there is a meteor shower incoming, and we can see here that it is an iron meteor shower, and we're able to identify it because we have an enclosed telescope and the allow meteor shower identification to come on. So we're going to get a good test of our meteor blasters. And with each one of them loaded up with 30 blast shots, I think we're going to be just fine. Obviously, there's still gaps into it. We still have to dig all this out. Definitely still lots to do. I have just about finished the power room. I'm going to have to take everything offline, though, for a minute. We did end up with a power plant because we are under the 120 tile mark. And it also means that all of the hydrogen generators should be getting the NG tune-ups like this first one did. But now's the time I start switching it over to a power spine, so I am going to have to depower the entire sauna for just a minute and get down a few of the large power transformers. I'll start with the 2, no big deal. I am going with the heavy watt conductive wire along with the heavy watt conductive joint plates just because we're going to have such a surplus of this iron. Now I just need to roll all the way through here, and then I will snip off from these lines here. Suppose all this can be recaptured. And there we go. The start of our future power network. Now, I don't necessarily love this system. I might try to flip this up a little bit. As you can see, there are so many hydrogen power generators here that it doesn't take them but a fraction of a second to get the battery all the way up to full blast. Eventually, we will have more power sources, for instance, the steam turbines. And I have started loading up this gas reservoir full of hydrogen when this thing starts erupting again. More on that in a second. We have a meteor shower coming in as expected, and so far it looks good. Here we go. Whammo blammo. Working perfectly. I have put down one gas reservoir to start storing some of the hydrogen. Granted, the hydrogen coming out of this vent will not be enough. I mean, it's going dormant in 11 cycles, and we are using this up pretty well. But remember, we have an entire hydrogen line that we will also be able to feed with it. I'm also starting to get a little bit of overloading on this line because there's too much up here on it. So I need to get some more switched over. Doesn't help that we're still doing all this stuff with these gas pumps. So I think I'll put them on the other power transformer. That should help a little bit. And now I suppose it's the time to start putting in all the temperature shift plates. Now, I like to use igneous rock, and we seem to have plenty of it from the Meteor. We are up to over 1,482 tons worth. But this is going to take the duplicants a very long time. You may have also noticed that I installed the blueprint mod, and these days, it's the only thing I ever use the mod for. So we're going to go ahead and click on igneous rock, and then set it to priority 4, so the dupes just get to this when they get to this. There's no reason to have the temperature shift plates touching the neutronium or the insulated tile, so we will just sort of start like this. In fact, I'm going to start here on this row, just because there's not much in between here, and so when I grab a giant blueprint, this will work, and I'll show you that in just one second. And now that we have all those queued up, I can go with a snapshot, select them all, not the ladders, because it would also select those as well. And now I have a snapshot filled with temperature shift plates. Now it does not keep track of the priorities, so I will have to go overwrite them with 4s. That's not too big of a deal. And even doing it like this, it's still going to take quite some time to make sure everything's lined up, looking good, etc, etc. Alright, so we got them all queued up, except for the fact that, well, according to the game, we're out of igneous rock now. So I'm going to let the dupes work on this a little bit. Hopefully, we will be getting more igneous rock the more these volcanoes erupt. And near some of the volcanoes, we will not be using igneous rock. These will have to be obsidian, which is very expensive, considering you only get so much obsidian on this planetoid. But the volcano does have an opportunity to actually melt the igneous rock temperature shift plates. The good thing about the temperature shift plates is they'll all start off much cooler than what the sauna is, which will drop the overall temperature in here, which is great because we're starting to get hot enough to melt sulfur. And so until I can get the steam turbines online, this will be a good stopgap solution. Hopefully it doesn't drop the temperatures too much though, because that would be, well, a lot of water. We only have 2 cycles until this hydrogen vent is dormant as expected, so I have tapped into the hydrogen line down here, but I've put a bridge on it, and that way we're using all of this hydrogen first before we start using all the bee hydrogen. Eventually we will domesticate the bees and the Saturn critter trap, so it will not be an issue, but for now this is going to be a good stopgap solution. But even until we domesticate this process, we still have 53 kilos worth of hydrogen pressure in this entire cavity, and a gas buffer tank that has about 900 kilos in it. And we are making slow progress on the temperature shift plates. They are all set on priority 4, so it'll get done when it gets done. I did do the obsidian ones around the volcanoes first, because I am more worried about spreading out this heat as soon as possible. But this volcano goes dormant in 4.5 cycles. This one up here only has another 25 cycles, so I needed to produce a lot more igneous rock in that time frame. Alright, it's been a little while. We're sitting here at cycle 585. You can see that we've managed to make some progress with the temperature shift plates, although we still have a lot more to go. You'll also notice a little bit of work here on the top, and I've decided, in about the week since I recorded the first part of this episode, that a second shelf might be the way to go. The second shelf is going to hold all the meteor blasters and space scanners, and the first shelf is going to hold all the steam turbines. And that way I don't have to do something like steam turbine, meteor blaster. Now the disadvantage here is, well, there's a bunch of neutronium in the way, so it's a little haphazard about how to get around. We've got a bunch of little ladder wells in here, and well, it's not the cleanest method there is. Also, in between the recording of this episode, I've been advised that taking 1,000,000 rad bolts and putting it into neutronium no longer will destroy the neutronium. So now it looks like the only way to do it is with rockets. I could, of course, always just install the mod that allows me to remove neutronium, but I don't know if that's sort of the flavor of the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do we just work and live around the neutronium, or do we get rid of it? You'll also notice that on the second shelf I'm using just regular mafic rock. Mafic rock because, well, I have a lot of it, but not insulated tiles. And the reason why is because this is a vacuum. So there'll be no heat transfer going from this area up to, say, this meteor blaster. But if I were to have regular tiles on this first shelf, some buildings would still transfer with those thermals. So in a way of just avoiding that altogether, we just make this first shelf insulated and we don't have to worry about it. I'm also putting in a thermal Aquatuner. I actually had to make it out of iridium because it's been spiking too hot in here. We're already above 350 degrees in this area and even hotter in some of the others. For instance, 600 over by the volcano. But I need to have the cooling solution in before I put the steam turbines in, so more on this in a little bit as well. I've also pretty much given up trying to get all the gases out from the top of here. It's sort of a waste of time considering there's still so much debris down here at the bottom. Like here's something here off-gassing. Yep, I see you, Bleachstone. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is wasting some of that precious steam and just opening this up to the vacuum of space, allowing some of these junk gases to get out, and then sealing it back up. It's gonna take a little while, just like everything else in this episode, but we'll get to it. On the good news front, you can see that there's no more steam down here, which would be really good news, except I've been pumping chlorine gas into those tanks. I don't know when it was that all that steam went away, but I guess it's not too shabby. Only 19 kilos of chlorine? Yeah, might as well. We'll just empty that into the sauna as well. We're currently venting, well, a lot of steam. Just on the outside of the sauna, it's already up to about 8 kilos. But it's done such a great job of getting rid of the yuck gases over here. So I think we're just going to duplicate this process. I'm now going to do the next one over here. And I see a little bit of yuck gases there, so we'll do that one. The bottom's going to be a little bit more difficult to clean, but we'll get there. And just like that, there are no more junk gases at the top. Oops, I definitely forgot to fill that one back in. And our second layer is going in pretty well. I'm using a strategy of about every 24 tiles, we are putting in another meteor blaster. This gives us a decent amount of overlap between each of the meteor blasters and the space scanners. So we're going to have a great network quality, which means our scanners will detect meteors even faster, turning on the meteor blasters that much quicker. The question I'm running into is how much further over do I want to put this second level? Because I'm going to be wanting to capture all of that rocket heat, I don't want to put the rockets up on the second level. Instead, they need to be down here. Which then begs the question, how many rockets am I going to have on this one planetoid? 2 at the minimum, right? 1 for delivery of dupes and assets, and another one for general exploration? Maybe a third for mining? I think this meteor blaster is also going to end up going on the second row, and then I'll just try to keep 1 for the rocket silo area. While I'm up here, I'm also doing a little bit of maintenance. Figured we might as well put the automation wire and the power wire inside the tile so it just looks that much cleaner. Hopefully a meteor shower doesn't come in the next 10 to 15 cycles because I have work to do. And yes, I do realize I probably don't need this many space scanners. In fact, we're up to 99% before we even put this one in. But it kind of looks cool having a little scanner right next to each meteor blaster. And if all these are going to have one, maybe this one should too? Well, this is an odd thing to find in the space biome. A pair of fossil fragments right next to each other. We will get those excavated. I put in the rocket platforms. It's going to be a while before we actually start putting rockets on these, but I wanted to sort of figure out the spacing, and I think that'll do just fine. I don't love the coverage of this final meteor blaster. You can see we got good overlap from the second to last meteor blaster to this one, but you'll notice that there's no room. So there's a small chance a meteor could sort of spawn here and go straight down, which wouldn't be a big deal because even if a meteor comes in like this meteor blaster should still be able to get it. If we do want to put a third rocket platform, we have room here, but I figured we'd just start with the 2 so we can figure out the automation and everything we want with them. And now we have 100% scan network quality and complete overlap from our meteor blasters, so we should be 100% safe from meteors. Now let's get this thermo Aquatuner finished up. I did tie it in to power down here, leaving that last little bit unconnected until I get all the coolant and everything in there. Also keeping in mind that 1 thermo Aquatuner is only good for about 5 steam turbines. So we will be duplicating this process probably over here somewhere, because I'm not entirely sure how many steam turbines we're actually going to need. You can see here we can fit 2. That's good news. We're going to use iron because, well, we have an infinite supply of it. We'll see how many we can get over here. Oh, that's pretty good. Now, with this second level, it sort of makes sense that I would put the NG tune-ups on these. I could separate the rooms like this, put doors in here, and as long as the rooms themselves aren't bigger than 120 tiles, it'll work. Now I'm left with an uncomfortable number. I was going to put in 1 more steam turbine here. That would make 8 on this side and then 7 on this side, and that does not include the cooling required by the meteor blaster. Now eventually I'm going to have a better coolant other than polluted water. A. B. These steam turbines are not going to be running all the time, so I'm wondering if I can get away with just using 1 thermo Aquatuner for 7 and then 8 plus these buildings. No, I know better. I tell you what, why don't we just do the coolant in series? Sort of like this. I'll need to move this bridge around. Yeah, that's gonna work just fine. And then I'll do the same thing over here, using more steel that I do not have yet because I still haven't put in the metal refinery. I want the cooling up here first. Of course, having 140 tons of iridium feels pretty good. And then, of course, we are going to need the conduction panels. I will place these sort of like this. Have I ever cooled an enclosed telescope? They only create 125 DTUs per second. They do have an overheat temperature, though. So yeah, I guess we're going to cool it as well. The space scanners do not create heat, so I do not need to worry about them overheating. And of course, I was creating them out of nickel. Now over here is going to be especially painful because the rocket exhaust is going to want to melt everything under here. In fact, before I even forget, let me go ahead and make all of these tiles from this point over nothing but obsidian. And then the automation wire going in will be... What's the melting temp on iridium when used just as metal? 2445. So 20 degrees higher than steel. Not helpful, but I suppose we'll use it. And then the same thing for the power wires. They will also be iridium from this point over. Okay, the dupes have a lot to do once again. With all the steam turbines in, I do have another decision to make, and that is where I'm going to bring the heavy watt wire up, because I definitely want all this power on the grid. In keeping with the theory that the dupes are going to be running mostly up here to do things like metal refinery work, I would rather have all the heavy watt wired at the bottom and towards the left. So what I'm thinking is right here might not be bad. Oh, it stinks. I could get one more steam turbine in there. Okay, yeah, let's move all this over. I did have to make sure to replace a bunch of automation with some wire bridges, because otherwise the doors would end up staying locked. Not a big deal. But now, since I know where that's going to be, I can bring the heavy watt wire right up through here. We will use heavy watt conductive wire, because I'm sure this colony will eventually have more than 50 megawatts on its grid. And we will just go straight down. Little complicated around the volcano. Of course, I could just use our favorite new material, iridium. Let's see, iridium here melts at 2445. Our iron volcano erupts at 3421. No, that's not going to work. Now, granted, the steam shouldn't get that hot, but the 1 or 2 tiles right where it's erupting can super spike, so we're just going to go up and around. Also on the docket is a lot of plumbing work. Now, in our example here, for the thermal aquatuners, this should work. Remember, the theory is the same. The water comes in, the thermosensor checks to see if the coolant needs to be cooled. If it does, it goes through the one aquatuner, and then we'll instantly go out of it into the next aquatuner. In other words, we're going to be chilling that coolant by 28 degrees anytime we deem it's too hot. Otherwise, it'll bypass here and come out with the rest of the coolant through this bridge area. And then we just have to play the loopy-loop game around all the buildings and steam turbines. I really am just getting way too used to this iridium. I just made a power transformer out of iridium because I'm out of steel again. But I care not. Our thermal aquatuners up here are going to need power. There's one. Oh, this is awkward. I'm going to move these over a little bit. I mean, maybe I'll replace them in the future with steel once we get some more. I'm sure I wouldn't forget. There's those thermal aquatuners all connected. Now I need to get another one up over here. And here we go. Oh, I was going to say here we go, but we still have a little bit more work to do on this line. There we go. It looks somewhat okay. Look, the spaghetti is not my fault. It's the neutronium. Make sure you let me know what you want me to do with it in the comments below. Thank you. Speaking of power issues, the heavy watt conductive wire is fine going up through here, but then we have this problem. I need to be able to get it over to here. I think I can get it the rest of the way, but I was really trying to avoid sending the heavy watt wire up through here, where the dupes are running the most. Remember, this is the neutronium's fault, not mine. It's gonna look kind of ugly. I need to deconstruct all of this nonsense that is not part of the sauna, but I think that's gonna require a debris chiller, which is probably gonna end up coming next episode, because we have a lot of debris in here that I need to be able to get into the colony, and it has to be significantly cooler than this, because there are hundreds of tons of materials that we're going to need to be using, but I don't want to risk bringing them all in here. And the best way to do that is just to send every last piece through a debris chiller. We're going to need it anyways for all the igneous rock, perhaps the iron, and somehow my power transformers are flooded by 1,000 grams of sulfur. Wonderful. Elsewhere in news, because I'm an apparent giant dum-dum, I built all these machines out of iron ore, thinking, well, the oxygen vent only erupts at 60 degrees. Unfortunately, I didn't remember that my sand's going to be sitting in the sauna, superheating to 200 and something degrees, and then circulating around here. So I need to get back in here, which is going to require, of course, a small lock, because I don't want, well, the 44 kilos of oxygen in each and every tile here to end up exploding into my sauna. That would make me a very sad Echo. So we're going to get in here by putting a little bit of naphtha right there, deconstructing this tile, hoping that the naphtha falls just enough, and then we'll do that again, and then I should be able to crawl in here if I can deconstruct the gas pump, make a ladder, and then the last thing we'll rebuild is the gas pump. Everything else, though, I'm just changing material into iridium, the gift that just keeps on giving. Please don't explode. Please don't explode. Please don't explode. Oh, it didn't explode. Look at that. Alright, so it worked out well. Unfortunately, we are going to have the naphtha of shame down here because, of course, when I built the tile up, the naphtha decided to go right. There's nothing I can do about it. Hopefully the deodorizer can still pull polluted oxygen from down here and send the clean oxygen up here even though naphtha is sitting in the tile. I don't know. It's not a big deal. So I was able to get the power wire in. And yes, as I said, it's pretty ugly. But all the steam turbines are connected to the heavy wall conductive wire to include batteries for each. Each set of steam turbines is on its own battery. In that way, if I wanted to set these 8 here at a different threshold from these, I could, which we probably will, because all that rocket exhaust is going to superheat this area. So we'll probably need a little bit more finite control from these steam turbines. Now it's time for the plumbing. I'll see you in an hour. In the middle of installing the plumbing, we did get a treat of a meteor shower. Uh-oh, why aren't you on? Why aren't you on? Oh, dear goodness. Insufficient blast shots? Oh, no. Oh, there's no way I ran out of blast shots, right? Why are we still at 50 queued up? Let me go ahead and raise the priority of the blast shot maker. It has everything it needs. Well, at least we're knocking some of them out of the sky. Just no more over here, please. Oh. It's like they know where I don't have any blast shots. It's like they know. Alright, steam turbines. No, we're not starting already. Oh, I shouldn't have connected them or something. I'm setting the batteries to 0, which will stop them from turning on, because I do not need them to raise in heat until I get that coolant going through. For the automation from the thermo sensor on the Aquatuner, we're only going to send automation to the first Aquatuner, because the second one, if it receives liquid, it's always going to fire. So the only time that we need to figure out, hey, the thermo Aquatuner is disabled, is when we do not want to cool it by 28 degrees. Otherwise, it's going through both. Okay, the plumbing is in. Remember, it is spaghetti-like, but it's not my fault, it's the neutronium's fault. All the steam turbines are hooked up to their vents. The thermo Aquatuner loops are installed with everything that they need to keep cool. And all we're really waiting for now is the polluted water. So I don't see why we can't just hook the first one up. We'll use yield bottle drainer there and say right there. Then all we have to select is polluted water, enable auto bottle, and they'll start dropping it off 200 kilos at a time. Now remember, with our polluted water, it has a flash point of 119.4 degrees, so we don't want it to get hotter than that. Hence the reason we're using 2 thermo Aquatuners, which will be able to remove 28 degrees every time liquid passes through it. But more importantly, I believe, because I don't think we're going to hit this flash point, is it can freeze at minus 20.6. So I have the thermo Aquatuner set on 15 degrees. So if the polluted water is above 15 degrees, it'll reduce it by 28 and then send it right back through. So at the coldest the temperature should be on that polluted water is about minus 13. And I'm thinking from minus 13 to 120 should be plenty of thermal range to keep everything that this cooling loop will need to keep cool. Last thing on the loops is you will see that I brought these into the sauna themselves. I did not want them crossing underneath the rocket exhaust directly, These still will probably need an upgrade. In fact, I'm going to do it now. We will use obsidian from, say, let's just do the whole thing, since this place is going to get pretty hot. I did plug in the thermal aquatuners, so they can start running immediately. We'll get to see if there is a problem. Where I might see a problem, and I'm not 100% sure, is you're noticing that some of these blobs are skipping by, and it's because there's no vent for them. Hence the reason why this polluted water is at 62 degrees. Give me a second to redesign this system here, because this will not work. Basically what's happening is a blob is coming through and saying, oh, I can't go right now because I'm stuck. So I might just separate these into two independent systems. Alright, be right back. Okay, I made it fit. Same system as before, we're just doing it more in line. That way one thermal aquatuner cannot back up the other one. There's probably a more creative way of doing that. This is just the most simplistic method. The only change I made on the automation was each one will fire if the coolant is above 5 degrees. This one looks a little cleaner because we didn't have the neutronium in our way. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now all we have to do is keep filling that loop again. Now that I say that, where's the polluted water that was in there? Well, at least it's too hot to off-gas into polluted oxygen. The last bit of automation I put in is the thermosensor. Right now I have them set to above 250 degrees and they are on the same automation network as the batteries. I'm going to set the batteries to say 90-50, so there'll be a secondary source of power for our colony, despite the potential energy being much higher considering how much heat this place is going to hold. So if this sauna is hotter than 250 degrees at either this point here or this point here, the independent steam turbine networks will turn on. Now keep in mind, yeah, there's some centralized area, but eventually we're going to be picking all this igneous rock up and swirling it around the sauna to even out the temperatures here. Now right now you can see all the steam turbines are having a problem getting started. It's because they're too hot. You'll also notice every once in a while a polluted water blob is cracking the pipes, and that's because the buildings themselves are dumping too much heat into the blobs. But after a couple minutes, this will relax. Give me a few minutes to load up the rest of the loops and get these buildings cooled down. I wanted to highlight that this volcano has started to erupt again, and because of all the steam in the area, as it was erupting, it was flashing the igneous rock into its debris form, not its tile. So we eventually might not even need this directional system where we're sending the magma blade. Some of the places where the heat damage is occurring is right here at the edge of the conduction panel, and it's because it's taking in so much heat from all of this area that as soon as the blob exits the conduction panel, it's like, yep, I've hit flashpoint. And on that note, we are using iron conduction panels because they're pretty middle of the road when it comes to thermal conductivity. Once the cooling loop gets ahead of keeping these buildings cool, iron is plenty enough of a thermal conductor to be able to transfer back and forth with. It also does not help that I still have steam in here from when I opened that area up. Eventually it will all cool down. It's just going to take a few minutes. As you can see, we have some steam turbines over here starting to work. It's just a lot of heat. I managed to overfill this coolant loop by one blob, and you can tell because of the way it's staggering. This is not a big deal. I'm just going to send a plumber up here. We'll take out 1 or 2 blobs. In fact, I'll probably take out 3 blobs since we have 2 thermal aquatuners. And that way there's always plenty of space for the thermal aquatuners to push its freshly cooled coolant. You'll know you're good when the blobs never stop, just like this. Notice there's no jagged effect. You don't see partial blobs passing through. And just like that, our right side of the super space sauna is working just fine. Unfortunately, it looks like we're a little bit behind on NG tune-ups, despite the fact that these are all sitting in a power plant. It's just going to take the electrical engineers a little bit to get up to here. These are the furthest generators in the planetoid, not to mention we have a lot of stuff going on elsewhere. This side, it's taking a little bit more work, thanks to all the extra heat that this volcano had dumped into this area. One of the proofs in the pudding that lets me know this design is going to work is the fact that right now, only one aquatuner on the right side is running. And that's because the coolant is only sitting at 12 degrees, so it's already cool enough by the time it hits the second aquatuner. This one over here, it's still chilling it down. I've also turned the automation off on the steam turbines to make sure that we get them down to temps before I start turning them on again. Small update on the naphtha of shame. Apparently it decided to move around. I have no idea how it got from over here to over here, but the system's still working great. One of the first things we will do when we do get our grubby little hands on some supercoolant is replace both of these loops with supercoolant, and then the thermal aquatuners won't even need to run half the amount of time, which will make it even more efficient and less power hungry. The left side's starting to come online, and I wanted to show you a perfect example of an issue that you can have that we talked about earlier, and it's with buildings sitting on top of hot tiles. Notice the heavy wall conductive joint plate that the steam turbine is sitting on. All the other steam turbines are under 90 degrees, heading towards under 80. This one, not so much. It's at 226 and just keeps going up and then down and up and down, and it's because it's sitting on this joint plate. So I need to move this joint plate around. And there we go. The steam turbine's already under 150, and it will keep going down. Well, as soon as all the hot steam that I had to let out condenses back into water, and then it should be okay. In fact, the polluted water is already down to 67 degrees, whereas on our right side, the polluted water is sitting at 5 degrees. You'll notice over on the right side, the heavy watt conductive joint plate comes through right next to the steam turbine, and it's perfectly okay. Not to mention the fact that the heat is not escaping either because it's just a vacuum of space. Whereas this one, the heat wasn't going anywhere else other than the steam turbine, but it was easily able to transfer from one to the other. And there goes the left side working like a charm, with only one thermal aquatuner needed. Eventually the second one will kick in if the steam turbines have been running long enough. Right now they are on because it's above 250 degrees over here. The steam turbines on the right side are pretty stable. We still have a lot of work to do in the sauna. You can see there's plenty of places that still don't have temperature shift plates. The left side isn't even close to being done yet. We're still hurting on more igneous rock, so as these volcanoes erupt and give us more, we'll fill in more of the gaps. This project is far from complete. We still have the debris rotating rail system that we're going to put in, so we can dump even more heat in here. We have the debris chiller that we want to connect to it to be able to cool that stuff down to a nice balmy colony safe temperature. We also need to load the place up with a bunch of things like metal refineries, rock crushers, and whatever else around the colony produces heat. In the next episode, I think we're going to get started on the debris chiller and maybe even the episode that everybody's been waiting for. That's the kitchen upgrade. We still don't have a deep freezer. We definitely need one. Yeah, we're hovering around 276,000 calories, but that's just because we're creating so much and a lot of it just spoils. I hope you enjoyed this episode and learned a ton about how to employ your own super space sauna. Also, I'm looking forward to reading the comments to find out if you have any suggestions or recommendations of what else you think we should put in the sauna. Or would you have done the second level system a little different? I think it turned out kind of well. But then again, there are plenty of ways to skin that pip. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.